This story is about an employee who eventually left the company and started a competing business, taking many of the customers with him. As with the previous stories, some details have been generalized to protect the privacy of the people and organizations involved. But the dynamics are real, and situations like this are more common than people realize. In many service businesses, the technician becomes the face of the company. They're the one who shows up, they're the one solving the problems, and they're the one the customer actually interacts with. And over time, naturally, relationships begin to form. In many cases, the customer's experience of the company is almost entirely the technician standing in front of them. When something goes wrong, it's the technician who shows up. If a job takes longer than expected, it's the technician who stays late to finish it. And if a problem needs extra attention, it's the technician explaining what's happening and how it's going to be fixed. And from the customer's perspective, the technician is the one doing the work. They see the technician's effort, they see the technician solving the problem, and what they don't always see is the company behind the scenes. The scheduling, the equipment, the vehicles, and the insurance. All of this overhead that makes the service possible. So over time, the relationship can start to feel like it belongs to the technician rather than the company. And in a lot of situations, the company owns the brand, but it's the technician who owns the trust. In service industries, those visits often happen repeatedly. The same technician may return to the same customer multiple times a year. And over time, conversations happen, small talk, advice, explanations about what's going wrong and how to prevent it next time. And gradually, the technician becomes more than just a representative of the company. They become the person the customer calls when something goes wrong. And that dynamic creates an interesting situation because that relationship begins to feel personal. In this particular situation, the technician had started planning to open his own company. And rather than starting from zero, he began preparing the ground before he even left his job. Because he was the technician interacting directly with customers, he already had something valuable: trust. Customers knew him, they were comfortable with him, and quietly, over time, he began letting some of those customers know that he planned to start his own business. When he did, he told them that he would be able to offer similar services at a lower price. For the customer, the decision became simple. They already trusted the technician, and if the same person was offering the same service for less money, the incentive to switch was obvious. Eventually, he left the company and started his own business. And when he did, many of those customers followed him. Situations like this are possible because of the way in which many service businesses operate. The technician is the one who spends time with the customer. The technician understands the work, and the technician becomes the face of the company. When that technician leaves, customers sometimes feel like the relationship left with them. From the customer's perspective, they're simply choosing to continue to work with the person that they trust. And from the company's perspective, the business they built is walking out the door. From what I understand, the company didn't react dramatically, at least not in a way that became widely known. But the loss of those clients was real. Now, what he did was clearly unethical. He used the relationships built while working for one company to compete directly against that same company. But situations like this don't appear in a vacuum. In many service industries, technicians often earn far less than the value they generate. And over time, some workers will begin to see independence as the only path to better income. They gain the skills, they gain the relationships, and eventually the idea of starting their own business becomes very tempting. Now, I'm not saying that's exactly what motivated him, but incentives like that exist in many industries, and incentives shape behavior. Situations like this create a difficult problem for organizations. When companies invest in employees who interact directly with customers, they're also creating the possibility that those relationships could eventually be redirected elsewhere. From the company's perspective, that represents risk. The effort in training someone deeply and giving them autonomy and allowing them to build strong client relationships, all of that can strengthen the business, but it also creates the potential for competition from inside. Many companies in service industries are aware of this risk. Some introduce non-compete clauses. Others restrict technicians from having direct pricing discussions with customers. Some rotate employees between accounts so that the relationships stay tied to the company instead of the individual. And none of these approaches are perfect. Too much control can make employees feel distrusted. Too little control can leave the business vulnerable. Companies are constantly trying to balance those two pressures. When something like this happens once, organizations rarely respond by trusting the next employee more. Often you'll see the opposite happens. Companies begin tightening controls, customer relationships become more centralized, employees may receive less autonomy, and sometimes companies become more cautious about investing deeply in the development of individual workers. From the employer's perspective, those changes are attempts to reduce risk. But from the employee's perspective, those same policies can feel like distrust. And that's where the broader effect appears. One person's decision can quietly reshape the environment for everyone who comes after. Employees who would have never considered taking clients may still find themselves working inside systems designed to prevent exactly that. Policies, restrictions, less autonomy, not because of something that they did, but because of something someone else once did. When companies invest in employees who hold direct relationships with customers, how do they balance trust with protection? How much autonomy can an organization safely give before it creates the possibility of internal competition? And when trust is broken once, how does that change the way companies treat the next employee who walks through the door? Situations like this raise difficult questions for both sides, and I'm curious how others see it. If you've worked in an industry where technicians hold a relationship with a customer, what happens when someone leaves? Do the clients stay with the company or follow the person?